Um, do you have any furry animals, Chaz?
Yeah, I have two dogs. It's a circus, but it's pretty fun.
What are your dogs' names?
I got a Michael and a Bam Bam.
Nice.
So
What,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
um, so thank you for making Mahal. And um, so Mahal, the album, or at least um a big part of it is the Jeepney.
hmm
And that was a word that I never heard
Right.
before reading and looking into it. So, could you tell us, for those of us who don't know or didn't know before this, what is a jeepney?
Yeah. So a Jeepney is a. I'm glad you asked, first of all, and thanks for having me. A Jeepney is a vehicle. It's a public transit vehicle from the Philippines, specifically made out of World War II parts, World War II Willys Jeeps that were left in the Philippines during after the war. Um, my Jeepney specifically was one of those Jeeps made out of the World War II Jeeps, and it was converted in 1967,
Wow.
like 20 years later. I think it's in 1942, and then they chop it up and like add some extra body to it. So it's this very hodgepodge like public transit thing, very similar to a tuk tuk, in the sense that it's like eclectic and hand painted, and each driver like likes to customize it. So there's that. But then it was brought to the States actually. Um, my Jeep was brought to the States in the 60s, and the guy that commissioned it was like a an entrepreneur who owned like a housing development, and he would use the Jeep to give tours. So it was just sitting there. It only had like 3,000 miles when I found it on eBay. So I, hesitated at first, but then I saw a couple months later it was still available. And so I was like, okay, it's time to act. And yeah, made the purchase, and we began working on Mahal.
That is awesome. And how did you know about the jeepney, or how did you start looking into that?
Uh, well, it started off by just looking for Jeeps on eBay. And then I happened to see a Jeepney, and immediately, just because I knew what Jeeps were just as a kid, my mom talked about them all the time. We had like toy Jeepneys all over the house. Um, so I'm very much familiar. So when I saw it, I was like, whoa, what is this doing in the States? It's like in the US. So like, um, yeah, I knew no one else probably was looking at this thing because of how like eccentric it looked. And like there's no reason unless you're Filipino, you know what jeepneys are, like to like gush over this. Like it's kind of like a festive like a festive vehicle. So it looks like a a parade float in a way, in a sense, because it's so just far out. So yeah, I felt pretty good about it. I was just like, man, I don't think anyone's looking at this Jeep. I'm gonna ask them about it.
Cool. And then you decked it out yourself. Um, and I actually have a connection to that because I went to UW Madison, and I was the RA of a creative arts and design learning community. And so I had a bunch of kids, and it was the first year, and I had a bunch of residents were on my floor, and one of them was Gretchen Carvajal, who
Oh,
does Brown Girls.
that's right. I forgot she's a Madison.
Yes. And so she was posting about she was posting pictures of you and of Mahal. And I was like, what's going on here? And
Yeah,
so could you tell me how you got connected to our mutual friend, Gretchen?
amazing. Yeah. So I was just a fan of Gretchen's company, Brown Girls, for a long time, just through Instagram. And I was like, when it came to decorate the Jeepney and like figure out how to do something custom to it, um, I saw her earrings again, and I was just like, actually, this is like perfect. Like, it's contemporary. It's something that like not a lot of Jeepneys have, which is like, acrylic, laser cut acrylic pieces. So like, I thought it was pretty fresh. So yeah, I hit her up, and she was down immediately. Like, it's a it's a passionate project for a lot of well, for me, because I'm Filipino, and she was tearing up too, and it was like very emotional, and like she was like very thrilled to be a part of the project.
I love that. Two great people that I love coming together for a project. I was like, that is so rad. And she's from the Bay too, and that's like, I love that, like, that you ride so hard for it and get like people that are from there to be involved in like every single part of that. We do that at our radio station. I do that for like my city, and I love seeing people put on their city too. That's like super important.
Totally. Yeah, I think local community is kind of step one.
And
Yeah.
And so what's the future of the Jeepney, of yours? Like, do you own it? Are you driving it around? Are you like taking people through it? Because that's a big like identity of the album, is feeling like you're inside of it, and the transitions are super cool, being like going between it.
Yeah.
What are you doing with it?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a fully running vehicle at this point. So yeah, we've been using it for films and videos, and then on top of that, we're starting to do our pop-ups in a couple weeks with it. So we'll drive up to, like, we have an internet radio station here that all the kids listen to called Lower Grand Radio. So we're driving up to Lower Grand, and we're just gonna be, posting up, spinning, and potentially selling some shirts. But yeah, that's the thinking, is like I really wanted to make a pandemic friendly, if you will, campaign where we could bring the record to people outside somewhere.
Yeah.
Bring the music. Yeah.
In the coolest looking thing possible.
Exactly.
Well, we've been playing Postman, and it's so great. And also, like, I come from a long line of United States postal workers, so like a little extra pride.
Exactly.
What is the, so that's the visual identity of the album, is like the Jeepney is so part of that. What's the audio identity of this album? And do they collide? Do they intersect? And
I think so. Like visually and sonically, I think this is a match. This being a vehicle from 1967, and a lot of this music is inspired by 60s and 70s. So like, I don't know if I could do a record like this with like a more contemporary or a visual campaign like this with a more contemporary sound. Like I don't know. I feel like this is like right. If everything feels at home, like so I kind of just, I think what was the question again?
It was what's the audio identity of this album?
Yeah, I mean, it's a warm analog record. Like it's to me, I would just call it a psych rock record or rock and roll. Like there's straight blues references in some of the songs, and it's an Americana album. So a lot of the themes and the things that it talks about are just like life in America, if anything. So
one of the themes that kind of carries through it is Mississippi.
yeah.
What is that theme to the album?
I'm wearing my South Carolina jacket right now. So yeah, I'm a Southern guy, and I really just feel like the Mississippi Delta, if you think about it, that's where blues started. That's where a lot of soul sits, is in Mississippi. A lot of trauma sits in Mississippi. A lot of like history sits there. So like I wanted to connect and like make a song that sort of just supported Mississippi, in a sense that like just looking after everyone, and just like knowing, like, if we had to really just like hone in on the a part of the South that just could use some support and not be in like such a I don't know, it's I feel like just because of the way America's history has turned out, it's just like it's a hard place to live, is what I'm saying. So like to support it, it just felt good.
I think that is so important and so good, that like especially like Mississippi, such a place that is not talked about, or often forgotten or overlooked, or then, will be, kicked because it's a red state and because it is, underfunded and all that. I think that's great. And so you're from the South. How did you get to the Bay? What is the story there?
Yeah, I mean, I made my way out to the Bay about 10 years ago now. My wife, she ended up going to grad school at Cal, and then we ended up just staying. So that's about as deep as that story kind of goes. I mean, like, we just ended up liking it out here and we stayed.
Making this, you were talking about getting in touch with your Filipino roots. Did you listen to Filipino music when you were doing that too?
A handful of things. A lot of Filipino music, like especially from the 60s and 70s, it's like a little bit more lighthearted and a little bit more it's very like, yeah, lighthearted is the best way to put it. It's so like the only song that I really feel like I was channeling some of that stuff was Millennium. I don't know if you've heard that track, but the rest of it I was kind of going to even like, again, just more Americana. I was coming from a more like a world of Americana. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Millennium then. And
Okay.
like, how did you, what is the musical identity of the Philippines that you were listening to? And also, like, I would love to come out of this and play a song from the Philippines or an artist.
Oh,
So hit me
amazing.
with one of those too.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look at my phone. Well, again, like the musical identity of this record, yeah, it's definitely like an American rock album, but I do think the musical identity of the Philippines is complicated because it's a Asian country um, colonized by the Spanish, so it has this interesting melting pot effect by default. So, as an American or as a second gen, I do feel like I'm bringing something new to the mix there. So it's already, the Filipino culture and the music is already like one step removed from its like tribal sound. So it's
Totally.
not. It's a different approach overall. So it's interesting, like Filipinos are very much in the most positive way, like shapeshifters in the sense that like it's like Spanish and Asian. Like the food, the culture, the clothing, even the jeepney is very like it's got a lot of Latin influence. So uh I don't know. I feel like for me, the best thing I could do is just or my approach is just to just focus on what I know. Yes, I'm Filipino American, I'm black, but like I also uh I grew up listening to like McCartney and stuff. So like I have to like just be myself.
Yeah, totally. I didn't even know that the Philippines were colonized by Spain, or I was like completely unaware of that Spanish influence. That's like super interesting. Do you know when they like decolonized or when they, gained their independence?
Oh, I cannot say that
Okay.
number off the top of my
Sorry.
head.
I'm
Sorry.
just like thinking about Filipino history now. But could you find an artist, a Filipino artist for us to play in a song?
I'll tell you a compilation. You should
Yes.
check out this compilation called Hot Dog.
Okay.
And that's gonna fulfill all of your record digger needs because it has everything. Rare groove, like disco, funk, like there's a lot of these hot dog uh compilations and they're all just it's amazing like how much music was made by Filipinos in the Philippines and ended up on these compilations. It's like really good stuff.
Okay, I can't wait to check that out. And then I also always end on a song that is anything else that you like can't stop listening to, like the most recent song that has been really like stuck in your head or drew your attention.
The most recent song that, I mean, let's see. Let's just see what was playing on my iTunes just now. Oh yeah, here
Eh,
we go. We got Soichi Terada. You know him?
no.
Amazing Japanese producer from like the 90s who had like his music reissued recently. Yeah, Soichiterada.
Hey.
Soichi Terada. And yeah, check out, I think this is what is this album called? Oh, yeah, it's called Sounds from the Far East. But it's really amazing because it sounds like it's from now, but it's from 20 years ago. So
Rad.
pretty amazing. That's the goal here, is to transcend time and confuse everyone on when this was made.
Well, I think you've done it. I mean, Postman is such a ripper for us, and listening to the entire album this morning, I just love how you always keep it moving. I love how you always change it up. I love that there's always like a concept there and something interesting to dive into. And like learning about the Jeep, like that is, I love like learning about the world and history
Yeah.
and culture through an album. And uh thank you for teaching me yet again.
Uh, no, that's the fun part about this record, and that's something that I really had to like step into during quarantine. Was just like, I need to do everything. Everything needs to be intentional. It needs to be
Mhm.
truth. It needs to be like something that I don't mind talking about hundreds of times.
Right.
No shade, but like I love telling people about the history of a Jeep. Like just doing this interview process, I'm like, oh wow, this is a lot better than talking about like, I don't know, how sad you are or something. I
Right.
don't know. I'm
Right,
just
right,
like,
right, right, right.
but yeah, I'm still that. But yeah, I also I have this Jeep to make me happy. So and I have like, yeah, solid home life, which is, that's nice.
I love that. Well, thanks for the album. Thanks for the songs. Thanks for the chat.
For sure, dude. Thanks for having me.